The fall harvest is around the calendar's corner. Good morning, Taste Buds. I'm Chef Michelle Bernstein. Join me today here at Junior Achievement of South Florida, and I'll make you some good stuff from the fall veggie harvest here on SoFlo Taste. How fun is that? Good morning, Taste Buds. I'm Michelle Bernstein. Come on in to the Goya Kitchen at Junior Achievement of South Florida, and welcome to SoFlo Taste. It's getting to be fall vegetable season. There's a great lineup of fall veggies, so today I thought it would be fun to give you some of my favorite recipes for the harvest of fall. So let's get cooking. The first thing we're gonna do is stuff some acorn squash. I love acorn squash because I think that the peel of the squash is almost as good, maybe better sometimes, than the actual squash itself. And the one peel that you can eat, there's like two of them. Well, it might be three, but the two that I like are the acorn squash, which is this one, or the delicata. For the acorn squash, the best thing to do, whether you're making soups or you're actually gonna eat it the way we are today, is just by cutting it in half and scooping out the center. Just take a really sharp knife and pick one of the little indentions to cut it down right in half, like so. And then you see those beautiful seeds in the insides, you basically just scoop that out with a spoon. You could, if you wanted to, toast the seeds in a really nice low hot oven for quite a while with a little bit of salt. They are delicious. Anyway, so that is that. The best way to cook them is to turn them cut side down on a piece of parchment paper, like so, and to roast them at about 375 to 400 degrees until they're really nice and tender. Now, you can flavor the inside, the cut part, with anything you like. We just did a little bit of oil, salt, and pepper to get started because we have a lot going on with a lot of little diced pieces of squash. So let's talk about our filling. I'm gonna flip these over. We took another of my favorite squash, butternut, and we peeled it and we diced it nice and small. And the little diced pieces are here in this pan. And that is gonna be part of the filling for the acorn squash. So they are just cooking in some very simple, everyday style olive oil. We're not getting too high of a heat here, so we can cook an extra virgin oil and not denature the oil. So we have some smoked almonds. I'm a sucker for these, they're so damn delicious. Rather than doing them whole though, I think I'm gonna cut them down some, because if you have the whole almond in your mouth, like I do right this minute, you basically can't really taste the rest of the ingredients, nor can you feel the texture of everything else, because it's rather toothsome. So I'm just gonna pound these to break them up, but I don't want them like too crushed up, because I don't want them getting too lost in the mix. All right, so we've got our nuts. Now we've got some other fillings. We've got some cooked quinoa, one of my favorite grains. It's a Peruvian grain. It is one of the most incredible ancient grains, incredibly healthy, and it happens to be gluten-free, which is a plus, a bonus for a lot of people. So let's put some of this into a bowl. So we cook this just according to package instructions. I like my quinoa to be just barely on the chewy side. I love a little texture. I also have some dried cherries, which these are kind of hard to find sometimes, so if you'd rather use a dried cranberry, you can do so. Let's put that into the bowl. To flavor the butternut squash, I'm gonna flavor it the way I normally would flavor any type of squash. To develop a little bit of the sweetness, I have both shallots, which I'll add now, spices, and some brown sugar. So let's see where we are in the cooking process of the squash, because we don't want it to be too undercooked, too raw or crunchy before we add the sugar. We don't want it to brown quickly. So let's wait a couple minutes. But we can add right now the spices. I've got nutmeg, and I have a little bit of cinnamon, just a touch. Let's also go ahead and season this pretty heavily with kosher salt and some black pepper. The next thing we definitely need is to bring some freshness into this. So let's add a little bit of chopped herb. We have some Italian parsley, some rosemary, and some thyme. So let's take a little bit of the rosemary leaves off. Let's take some of the thyme leaves off the sprigs as well. We'll chop that together. And then let's finally take some leaves off of the parsley so we can add that too. Now there's so many variations of this recipe. If you don't like going on the sweeter side with the dried cherries, you can totally get rid of that, make this a little bit more savory, throw some fresh garlic, chilies, whatever it is that you love. You can stuff some squash at your home and make it your own. All right, so we don't want this to be crazy fine, but a little bit more. I can see our squash is almost there, so now I'm gonna add just a little sprinkle of some brown sugar just to bring out the sweetness in the squash. This is almost completely cooked. It's just starting to caramelize on the bottom, and because I cut it so small, it's gonna be a very fast cook. And this is gonna be all the fat that I need, or the oil in this case, to mix up this beautiful quinoa mixture so we can go into the squash. So let's go ahead and shut off the heat. Pour this into the pot with everything else, into that bowl. Let's go ahead and add our roughly chopped herbs as well into the bowl. Let's give this a quick mix, and then we have to add our almonds. I'm keeping the oil just next to me just to make sure I don't need any, and I don't think I do. We did add a little drizzle to when we roasted the squash. See how pretty this is? And it smells so good. All right, so I'm gonna add some of these nuts. I'll add a little bit in it and a little on top. So let's go ahead and fill our squash, and then I'm gonna throw it into the oven and warm them up. So this is a perfect time for everybody to go stretch your legs, get a glass of water, and remember, more of my fall veggie recipes after the break. Which vegetables do I consider to be fall veggies? Well, let me tell you a few of my favorites. There's pumpkins, obviously, squash, beets, carrots, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, potatoes, parsnips, radishes, spinach, and zucchini. You got them? Okay, now you can come right back.
Come back to SoFlo Taste from the Goya Kitchen at Junior Achievement of South Florida. Chef Michelle is just getting started here on Local 10.
Welcome back to SoFlo Taste. We're here at Junior Achievement of South Florida in Coconut Creek, a place for kids. They are committed to hands-on experimental learning where students can apply that learning in real-world situations. For more information, visit jasouthflorida.org or call 954-979-7100. Now back to the veggies. I'm sure most of you have tried green bean casseroles in your life. So I've started out sauteing cremini and shiitake mushrooms in a little bit of oil and butter. Once the mushrooms are almost completely cooked, I'm gonna add some minced shallot and minced garlic. Now I'm just gonna keep mixing this around until it gets really nice and fragrant. And while I do that, I've decided to go ahead and make a little topping for my green bean casserole, air quotes. I'm gonna take some breadcrumb, cook it in a little bit of butter. Well, I wouldn't say cook because they're already cooked, but toast it, get it really like toasty. And we're gonna add these yummy shallots that are crispy shallots that you can buy in any good supermarket, or the Asian markets have the best ones. So I'm just gonna melt a little butter in the pan. I probably should have already told you. These are blanched green beans. They're just green beans or French beans that have been cooked in a little bit of salty water. It only takes about a minute and a half to cook them. They're tender, but they have a little crunch to them. And that's how you want them because they're gonna go in the oven for a little more time. My shallots and my garlic are nice and fragrant, which means they're pretty much already started to cook. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of flour to thicken this whole thing. Turn it into a little bit of a roux, even with the mushroom in there. In this pan, the butter is melted. I'm gonna go ahead and add some breadcrumbs. So this is on nice and low, and I'm just gonna keep going until it gets really nice and caramelized. and then I'll throw in the shallots. So the mushroom mixture, let's bring this together and see how we are. We really want this flour to kind of cook in the butter a little bit to get rid of that flour texture. All right, pushing it down into the butter. There we go. So I love marsala with mushrooms. I think it's just perfect. I think it was made to go together. So let's add a little bit of dry marsala, which is basically like a fortified wine. I'm going to raise the heat a little bit. We want to burn out any alcohol. Not that there's much, but we want to burn it out. And this will really start, as you can see, this becomes more of a glue, right? With the flour and the butter and everything. This is all really just come together. And my alcohol basically gone. So now I'm going to add a little bit of chicken broth to this and let that get good and creamy. And my breadcrumbs are nice and toasty. So I'm going to put my toasted breadcrumbs in this bowl over here. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to my breadcrumb and these crunchy shallots in there as well. And that is going to be a beautiful topping to this very 2023 green bean casserole. All right, let's keep checking out our mushrooms. Now we're getting more of like a gravy consistency. So the next thing we're going to add to the broth, which is starting to thicken up really beautifully, I'm going to add a little heavy cream. This is something you don't have to do. I just love that added richness to this dish. So if you want to do it, it really comes out well. There's only one last thing to me that this needs, and that is herbs, desperately. So mushrooms, green beans, all this begs for tarragon. And here's actually tarragon from my garden. It has a beautiful smell like anise, but it doesn't taste so much like that licorice flavor. So we're going to use a lot of tarragon and a little bit of parsley leaves for the finishing touch on this casserole. Let me lower my heat a little bit so I don't mess up anything while I chop my herbs. Let's mix all this together. Beautiful. All right, we're going to chop a little bit of the top of this tarragon, combine it with some of this parsley. Everything's nice and roughly chopped. All right, this goes into our stew of mushrooms with that touch of flour, butter, broth, and cream mixture. We haven't seasoned it yet, so let's add a little bit of salt and pepper to this. We are gonna take some green beans and place them down on the bottom and top it with some of this delicious creamy mixture, like so. And then I'm just gonna keep layering up, the last layer being, of course, some of this beautiful mushroom gravy, and then we'll put it in the oven, and when you come back, we'll top it with those crumbs. So hurry on back, because I got a doozy. Stay tuned to SoFlo Taste. We'll be right back. Welcome back to SoFlo Taste. We are on our last vegetable recipe, Brussels sprouts. I mean, I love them. I don't know if you do. I have decided that if you make Brussels sprouts and you happen to love bacon, and who doesn't love bacon, you got to do bacon and Brussels sprouts. So we have asked our friends over at Delaware Chicken Farm and Seafood Market for some of their bacon, which is delicious, and we cut it up really tiny, and I am just rendering it. And I have some exciting news about Delaware Chicken Farm, by the way. Our friends want you to join them for Tasty Tuesdays. Every Tuesday at 11:30, Chef Gene, who happens to be a very dear friend, and I love him. Mwah! Gene, you're the best. Mon ami, Gene, makes a tasty new recipe with samples. So Delaware Chicken Farm and Seafood Market is located at 4191 North State Road 7 in Hollywood. Just go to DelawareChicken.com or call them at 954-983-6831. Place an order and make sure, don't forget, Tasty Tuesdays, 11:30. Bring your fork. And make sure you tell Jean and everybody there Michelle sent you. All right, so I am just making bacon crispy. So you see all this foam that is developing over the top? When you get foam like this, these bubbles, this means that your bacon is caramelizing. And until you get that, you don't want to touch this stuff other than making sure it doesn't stick. Because once you see that I start grabbing it with a perforated spoon, which basically just means a spoon with holes in it, as you can see, it's beautifully caramelized. So when you get these bubbles, just like this foam, that foam represents the cooking of the bacon and the readiness of it. I'm gonna leave just a couple scragglers in there because I'm just gonna go ahead and throw in my Brussels sprouts. These are Brussels sprouts that are just halved. You don't have to add any oil, any butter, because obviously we have the delicious renderings of the bacon in the pan. What's great now is we have a topping. I love toppings. And speaking of topping, let's see how our green beans are doing, because I think they are ready to be topped as well. Oh, yes, they are. So let's go ahead and sprinkle our green bean casserole with, remember that shallot and toasted breadcrumb that I made earlier? So that is just going to go over the top. I would always leave a little bit on the side for anybody that wants a little bit extra. And there you have it. That would be good with anything. All right, so let's keep cooking our Brussels. What we're looking for is a little bit of caramelization. You know how you eat the Brussels sprouts, the fried Brussels sprout leaves that everybody loves? So you love them because, well, they're fried, right? And they caramelize in the fryer. They truly become these caramelized chips. And you can get that same flavor if you just don't touch this too much. You just let it caramelize on the bottom of the pan. So while that happens, I'm just going to go ahead and cut a little bit of dill. I have some fresh dill, again from my garden. Oh, y'all didn't see my squash that came out of the oven. Look how beautiful this came out. You see how everything just got really toasted and caramelized? This is really a beautiful dish. And this, for me, would be a meal. This is filling, and it's got so many great textures and flavors in there. All right, now it's time to add a little bit of shallot and a little bit of garlic to my Brussels sprouts. Stir that around a little bit. Let's season it up with a little salt and pepper. I know we have bacon, so let's not go too crazy with the salt, okay? Because that bacon is salty. Okay, I think we are ready for a little bit of maple. Not too much, just a little. Some lemon zest. And then finally, a little bit of lemon juice. To avoid the seeds, I go around the core of the lemon. Just like so. Let's add that dill back in to our Brussels. I always feel like dill is a friend of Brussels sprout. It somehow belongs together. Let's mix this up. Okay, and we are done. So I'm gonna shut the heat off, come right back so we can finish this together, shall we? To get a taste of what we made on today's show, go to SoFloShows.com. Come right back. Celebrate the food of South Florida at SoFloTaste.com. It's the place to ask me a question or make a comment, especially good comments. Again, SoFloTaste.com. Now back to the cooking. Welcome back to SoFlo Taste and our show all about fall vegetables. So this is our Brussels sprouts and this is our bacon. We're just going to top crispy bacon Might as well use all of it. On those delicious sprouts with the maple and the lemon and the zest and the dill. And they're just beautiful. I think I've made the vegetables and myself very happy with all this food. Thanks for coming along with me today. I hope I've given you some of my fall veggie recipes and that they can become your favorites too. Next week, I'm taking you to New Orleans, at least culinarily. It's the good foods of New Orleans on the next SoFlo Taste.
Hey there, Michelle. We love to see the vegetables on SoFlo Taste because we love the healthy on SoFlo Health, but especially on SoFlo Taste because you make it taste so much better. But speaking of SoFlo Health, tomorrow we've got some breathing exercises for you that you can do during the show, and by the end of the episode, you're going to feel great. Plus, we'll show you a place that has gymnastics just for the girls, and we have food opportunities and work opportunities for those in need. You won't want to miss it. It's on SoFlo Health tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. on the one and only Local 10, which is right here.
So Taste Buds, thanks for spending another morning with me. I love sharing these fall veggie recipes with you. I'll see you next time. Goodbye, mwah, and good taste. You really autumn? No.